The symbol for Pisces is two fish swimming in circles. And if you look at the basic symbol for Pisces, it's two curved lines with a tether in the middle of them, connecting them together. So in some interpretations, the two fishes are swimming in opposite directions of each other. Pisces is a water sign, and it's at home in Jupiter and Neptune. Jupiter rules over spiritual enlightenment in the ascension process. It rules over higher levels of knowledge, like college level education. Jupiter is a gas giant. Even though Jupiter is the biggest planet in our solar system, it floats, even though it has this big, massive gravitational pull to it. In astrology, Jupiter represents rising above the mundane aspect of life and can show someone who's become a guru due to their wisdom, and they're now untouchable, and people orbit around them, like the moons that orbit Jupiter. And people are drawn to people with strong Jupiter energy because they look to them as people who are enlightened and people who can guide them. So Jupiter kind of people inspire people, and they give them hope. The other ruling planet is Neptune, and Neptune is an icy planet. So if you look at a picture of Neptune, it looks very calm on the surface, very, very, very quiet, very beautiful. But underneath the facade, it's a very chaotic planet. There's very fast winds on Neptune. There's all kinds of phenomena on Neptune that kind of hard to imagine how they could happen. So in astrology, Neptune represents dreams, illusions, dissolving into fantasies, and higher levels of love, since Neptune is the higher octave of Venus, meaning that it takes Venus energy to a whole nother level, and to a whole nother level of intelligence. So there are octaves to planets in astrology. Like Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury, so it explains why Aquariuses and Uranian kind of people are extremely intelligent, to the point where it's inhuman intelligence. And Neptune, being the higher octave of Venus, is people with a lot of Neptune energy in their chart. They dissolve when they're in love. They sacrifice themselves for love. It takes it to... Hold on, I'm gonna explain a lot more of this in a minute, because I'm realizing things while I'm talking. So Pisces is exalted by Venus, meaning that Venus is in its dream position in Pisces. So when a planet is exalted, it's in euphoria. It's on a sugar high. It's not balanced. It's it's at its extreme. So because of this, when Venus enters Pisces, people go very high and then they crash very low when it comes to love and value. So with Venus being exalted in Pisces, it has reached its extreme when it comes to appreciation and love and value. So it's at home in the higher octave of Venus, where when Venus has reached its limit, Pisces is ruled by Neptune, which is, so it's it takes Venus energy, and then it gives it even more space to roam free, since it's the higher octave of Venus. I hope that makes sense. So because of all this Venus energy, you see a lot of Pisces they fall very deep in love, and then they also fall into deep despair because they believe in love so much that their vision can't manifest into reality. So they constantly feel rejected and invisible and heartbroken, and then they ultimately get jaded until they give up on love altogether, and then they hate everyone and everything, and they feel like nothing has value, and so they kind of become these spiritual people who they don't care about desires, they don't care about money, they don't care about sex, they don't care about whatever humans typically find value in. Like, they see past them. So like an evolved Pisces will think like, if I'm in this state of like spiritual enlightenment and have risen above my desires, if I go and like have sex with some random person just because my dick is hard, then I'm gonna be lowering myself, and then I'm gonna have to deal with all the chaos, and like they'll feel like they're thrown back into the collective where humans typically are at, and Pisces are about rising above, because remember that they're at home in Jupiter. Anyway, Pisces is in detriment in Mercury because Mercury is exalted in the opposite sign of Virgo. And so when a planet is in detriment, it means its hands are tied and it can't function regularly. So it has to operate in a different way in order to do the same thing that everybody else can do. It's like, it's kind of like it's injured. So yeah, Mercury is at home in Gemini and Virgo. It's exalted in Virgo. And these signs are very quick. They know how to think in a way that the human mind can work with and move with. And they don't have to take a bunch of extra time to like reevaluate and try to make sense of things or try to come across in a way that's like logical, because they just know how to do it automatically. So Geminis and Virgos can usually talk on the spot. They can get things done very efficiently, but Mercury kind of loses its tack in Pisces. It can't hold on to thoughts. It can't hold on to their own mind. So the naturally fast and detailed nature of Mercury dissolves in Pisces. So Mercury in Pisces just kind of like floats around and swims around in their own minds. And then they go into these kind of like mental frenzies at times because they're so unprepared for the kind of energy that Mercury works with. And they don't have the mental capacity to hold on to logic or obvious physical reality. So Pisces go in circles a lot, and they can take a long time to come to conclusions that people think is common sense. But the time Pisces does come to their senses, they've been swimming around in such uncharted territory within their own mind that they perceive things differently than other people. And they have a higher way of communicating, a higher way of thinking, because of all they had to do to like learn how to think. So yeah, by the time the Pisces does like reach a point where they can think in a way that can be functional, they seem to be in agreement with the consensus reality around them, but they're not, because their minds are different. So sometimes the Pisces never comes to their earthly senses and they just feel lost. They feel like they're in oblivion within their own minds, and they can't find a common ground with people. So they can't communicate with them. So Pisces can seem like they're avoidant. They don't talk. They are hiding things. They're like, they can seem shady. They can come across as liars. A lot of Pisces are liars, but a Pisces could be telling you the truth, but just because it seems, the way that they're saying it seems so strange, and you sense this energy behind their words that you don't understand, so you think they're lying. But no, in reality, Pisces is just in a different plane of existence, and they're trying to like come down and put it into words, or like in a way that people could relate to. So yeah, because of this, a Pisces usually will keep things short and sweet with you, and they seem like they get you, but under the surface, they're thinking totally differently than you are. The more agreeable a Pisces comes across, the more they're not here. Pisces thinks in visions and feelings. So Jupiter rules over both Pisces and Sagittarius, and Mercury is in fall in both Pisces and Sagittarius. So like Sagittarius wander around in our minds. We're trying to aim and shoot above the human mind. It's similar to Pisces because we're both ruled by Jupiter. But a Sagittarius uses their mind like a springboard. you have to keep in mind that Sagittariuses are always operating in this aim and shoot kind of way, like the centaur or the archer. So a Sagittarius will use our mind like a gun or like a bow and arrow or a springboard to launch us into more inspiring ways of thinking, because reality is boring to us. We want to see movement. We want to see something exciting happen. We want to like feel like heat within our own mind, like passion. A Pisces mind is more like an ocean, where everything exists all at once and it gets confused and mixed together. So unless a Pisces is thinking in an oversoul kind of way, where they see and feel everything and then are rising above that, then they get very lost and they have no idea what they think. So Pisces get they get lost when they try to be detailed with things. Anyway, Pisces originally comes from the 12th house, which is the last house. And the 12th house is a moksha house, like they call it in Vedic astrology. And this is where our soul is emptied back into the collective unconscious to swim around freely and blindly. And the 12th house is invisible to the naked eye. It's only felt on a psychic, subconscious level, and it's denied in our waking lives. So this is the house of eternity, complete ecstasy, complete nightmares, and everything can happen all at once with no context and no limits. So this is why a lot of Pisces and 12th house people have very unusual experiences that no one will ever know about. Like, we're tapped into I say we because I have my moon in the 12th house. We're tapped into a level of consciousness that not even our own human mind can comprehend. Like, for example, when I was a kid, I'd lay awake in my bed at night and I'd feel like I'd be frozen in my own mind, because I'd actually think and comprehend what eternal life and never-ending time, nothing existing and like everything's never ending would be like. And I'd feel what it's like to have a never-ending soul, and it terrified me to the point that I stopped letting myself have access to that kind of like mode of thinking altogether, because it's terrifying to the small human mind to comprehend things that are that huge. So the 12th house also rules over confined places like prisons, insane asylums, people trapped inside of a quote-unquote mental illness that distorts their physical reality. And these are all places, like the mind can be seen as a place, a prison. And I guess this is kind of why Mercury hates being in the 12th house and hates being in Pisces, because Pisces does rule over prisons and imprisonment, and the mind does not work normally in Pisces. So Pisces will feel imprisoned within their own minds. And imagine that you are in prison in a confined place and you have no stimulation. Then your subconscious gets to roam free, and it kind of dictates your life and colors your life in a way that no one else can understand, because they don't have access, unless you're psychic, to what you are experiencing. So all these places where you're unable to see the outside world because you're in bondage somewhere else, that's the 12th house. But on the flip side, the 12th house also rules over oblivion, like complete openness. It rules over the wilderness, it rules over wild animals, and it rules over large isolated nature reserves where no one else is, and where your subconscious mind just kind of like expands endlessly. Abandoned buildings, haunted places that no one goes to, all that. The 12th house is like an escape hatch into other realms. And it's people with 12th house energy or Pisces energy, they reach these states because they're in some kind of physical or mental bondage that leaves them so shrunken in and trapped that their subconscious makes up for it by tapping into other realms so that it can breathe again. I didn't mention planet Saturn, that rules over things shrinking and atrophying and being trapped and controlled to the extreme. That planet rejoices in the 12th house, because it kind of catalyzes the complete dissolving into the collective unconscious and then unity with everything because of how extreme and restrictive Saturn energy is. So it kind of, all this is like, all these planets that have certain positions in Pisces in the 12th house, they all work together to create the kind of experience that Pisces have. So anyway, anatomically, Pisces rules over your feet and the lymph system. And the lymph system is responsible for collecting the toxins out of your bloodstream. And you have lymph nodes at certain points of your body where the toxins tend to accumulate, like right around your genitals or under your armpits, or I don't remember where else lymph nodes are. Oh yeah, and like under your jaw. Yeah. So the tarot card that's associated with Pisces is the moon, and in the moon card, the full moon shines over a body of water it separates two cities. And so there's like a river going through two cities, separating them. And then on opposing sides of the water, there is two dogs howling at the moon because they're separated from each other. And then the river opens up into a stream towards the bottom of the card, and there's sea creatures crawling out of the water. And this card shows how Pisces always feels separated from themselves. They feel like their conscious mind is in separation from their subconscious mind. And they feel like they are separated from the collective. And they long to be reconnected with the more spiritual half of themselves while still walking around on this earth functioning as a human. And the sea creatures are coming out of the water from the depths. It's kind of like it's representing how sometimes the subconscious mind will come upwards for a moment and then have these big, huge realizations and see everything clearly, and then it goes back under the water because it can't survive on land. And then it has to forget all that it's just realized in order to like function and have its mind work in a way where it can survive underwater again. And the full moon that's on towards the top of the card, it illuminates things that are usually hidden from us. Yeah, I basically just described that. I don't need to go into it again. So I also heard some people say that the High Priestess is associated with Pisces, and the High Priestess is a woman who knows everything and she says nothing. The High Priestess it's kind of like the female version of someone who went to a monastery. I guess it's like the female version of a monk. It represents a wise psychic and kind of like a nun. Damn, I guess nuns and monks are the same thing. Anyway, so that was the planetary rulerships, and now moving on to other things. Pisces experiences this constant theme in their lives where they're haunted and they're like, they're not totally here because Pisces tend to live in denial. So whatever they're in denial about, they get haunted by. And they're kind of always aware of it on this like level it's right next to them, right behind them. They can't quite grasp it, so they kind of wave it off and don't take it seriously, but yet they always feel it. So they always feel like they feel like everything's kind of like an illusion because they feel things that aren't really, you're not able to see. So they kind of like think that everything they see in front of them must be kind of false too. And this gets very confusing. Pisces is usually, they go through this experience where they watch things manifest that they don't want, but they can never get exactly what they do want. And I'll describe exactly why this happens in a moment. But because Pisces can never seem to get what they want, Pisces is an extremely jealous sign. Keep in mind that Venus exalts in Pisces, and when they want something, they want it with their entire soul. Like, in a lot of cases, the Pisces would be willing to die and sacrifice themselves and completely let their ego and everything else go, just to have what they want. And sometimes the Pisces will even reach a point, they will sacrifice themselves, and they won't even expect to have the things that they want. They just do it because they love something. And it's not about possession or like things that humans usually get lost in. It's just about pure appreciation and worship, kind of. So yeah, you can imagine that Pisces experience torture underneath this because of their belief in true love and romance and divinity. Pisces, like I said, is a very confused sign. They don't know how their mind works. And like, given this is where Mercury is in its worst position, Pisces always feels taken advantage of by those that they love. And they feel treated well by people that they don't like. So Pisces always feels like things are just out of reach. Like they're just out of their level of awareness. They're just on the top of their tongue. They can't articulate it. They can't really talk about what they're experiencing because they don't know. And they feel this massive weight and this undeniable presence of something within them or around them. And they feel this nebulous connection to the universe, but they can't see it. So they get frustrated and they just decide that it's their imagination, nothing's real. Because in some cases, Pisces can remain kind of like, they can contain their composure, they can keep their balance about things and kind of accept that there's like dual worlds working. But if a Pisces truly wants something, it distorts their entire reality, and they'll be in love with something, but they feel completely hopeless and terrible at the same time. So that all ties in with the planets, Venus, Neptune, Saturn, all those, and how they function in Pisces. So with all this, if a Pisces still tries to go about their daily lives and walk around like none of this is real, they'll go insane. So for a while, Pisces try to numb this by escaping. They escape through sleeping too much, through TV, video games, drugs, drinking, sex, whatever their chosen vices are. And then their distortion gets worse and worse. And the more a Pisces tries to unveil what's haunting them, the more foggy and unclear it becomes, because they're trying to make sense of the phenomena they experience through their human mind, and they can't. So it just and then the Pisces feel stupid for even trying, and they try to escape this feeling even more. And so, yeah, they always feel perplexed and like someone or some cosmic force is controlling them or mocking them and bullying them and trying to break them down and ruin them. And Pisces doesn't feel like things are being dangled in front of them, but they feel like they're being dangled behind them. So they can't even see the things that are driving them insane. In some cases, I've seen some Pisces, they feel so tortured by this stuff, they become atheists. They become full of hate instead of love. They become very cynical people. They don't want to believe in anything anymore. They don't want Jupiter energy in their life. They don't want Neptune kind of like fucking up their vision. So yeah, they don't believe in love. They don't believe in grace, kindness. They think there's no higher cosmic force, no godly intelligence. And then by default, they always feel it. So they think they're fooling themselves and that their mind is working against them, or that they're just very permeable to the people around them. And that, like, if a Pisces is in a kind of like religious or spiritual friend group or family or environment, they'll assume that these people must be the reason why the Pisces feels like this, and they're just absorbing all their energy. And this is usually, this can happen, but it's kind of like, it's never one or the other. They're kind of like always working in response to each other. So yeah, a Pisces will feel helpless. They'll feel at the mercy of their environments or their peers. And then on an earthly plane, this manifests as Pisces being like, they let people take advantage of them because they feel so overly vulnerable and confused anyway. And they start feeling hopeless, and then in their relationship, it manifests as them letting people take advantage of them. Them sacrificing themselves for people who would never do the same. Them trying to overcompensate by how jaded they feel by flinging themselves into who knows what, doesn't even have to manifest a certain way. And then they feel victimized by the universe and by themselves. They kind of feel like if anyone knew how sensitive they really are and how they think, that they would attack them, and then Pisces usually does get in states of being where they're like consumed by all their worst fears, because remember, Saturn exalts in the 12th house, and Saturn rules over fear, shame, all these very dark, unwanted experiences. So Pisces will then go to drastic measures to hide their vulnerability, and they want you to see them as the villains and the bullies and the demonic people, so that you get scared off and you don't try to do to them what they're so terrified of happening to them. So when you're in denial, you do not know that you're in denial. You think that whatever is in front of you is actually true, and you assume things that aren't real are actually real. And you assume that things that are real aren't real and they can't happen. Because you can imagine that after a while, the Pisces mind kind of like quits because of all this confusion. And so you can see some Pisces, even though this is a sign that rules over things that are so high vibrational that they're not in this realm, you can see some Pisces, they become very dense and physical based people. So if it's not right in front of them, they don't see it, it's not real. They kind of like lose their sense of object permanence. So you focus on what you think is true in your life, and you put your time and attention onto these mundane, boring ass things. It doesn't even have to be boring things. It can be like just things that are physical, things that are you can have in earthly desires and stuff. So you put your energy into that on a regular basis, and then you wonder why it's not giving you the big results that you want, because you're tapped into a consciousness that is limitless, yet you've denied it. So, but on some level, you still kind of feel it. So you're always frustrated because you're never getting what you want, even though you work so hard on it. Yet in your subconscious mind, the things that you're in denial about are watching you. They're over your shoulder. They're growing larger and larger and more intelligent and more looming. And then you feel like you're being haunted by someone or something, or that everyone and God is out to get you. So Pisces feels alone in life. They feel like everyone's playing mind games with them. They feel like everyone's fucking with them and then acting like nothing is going on. And then they only trust people who are openly insane. And like a Pisces will only not feel jaded around you if you're like fucking crazy and you're like dancing around in your underwear on the roof or something. So at some point, what's going on in a Pisces subconscious grows so huge and obvious that they start realizing that they live in an opposite reality from reality. They realize how their own mind works, and they tap into super intelligence and psychic ability and this like limitless. They start instead of like drowning in their own minds, they start floating and letting everything expand endlessly, and they never stop learning. So they kind of rise above the human mind, and now they're kind of like on this God frequency. So Pisces will then learn, once they've experienced this, that if they want something, they just have to live in denial about it. And then if they don't want something, they just need to give it their attention regularly. So whatever is left in your subconscious to float around, it's untouched and untampered with, and it's given free reign to grow at an exponential rate, to the point that it gets so massive and so undefeatable that if you saw it right in front of you, you would die from terror. So the subconscious mind is the scariest place you could ever be. If someone was unprepared and their subconscious mind made themselves apparent to them, they would they explode. They can't comprehend it. So this kind of genius that Pisces has is revealed to them gradually at the rate that they could comprehend it. So think about this. Pisces naturally comes from the 12th house, where both Jupiter and Neptune are at home, and these are massive planets. So like, imagine that you're a tiny, fragile human like you are in comparison to these big, massive entities. The human ego hates feeling this way. It wants to be dominant. It wants to be strong and right and always know what's going on. So the more Pisces tries to gas up their own ego when they're in that like phase of life where they don't believe in shit, and they're like, if it's not in front of them, they don't care, and they're in their ego, the more weak they feel inside, and then they just start this cycle of going insane all over again. So honestly, a lot of Pisces will never come out of this, and they'll never come to their senses, because this is very complex stuff that they work with. I've seen a few Pisces die in La La Land. They never understand themselves, and they never understand this plane that they live on. They kind of like, some Pisces, I met one, I was psychically connected to him. He doesn't know it though. He has reached this point where he decides that nothing's real. He doesn't need to take care of anything, and he just kind of like lets life carry him around and do whatever it wants with him, because he doesn't understand. He doesn't know what's going on. He's not at the point where he can be on the journey to, I hate these terms like spiritual enlightenment and all that shit, but like, he's not in a place where he can take his enlightenment journey yet. So and that's not even the worst case scenario. But in a way, Pisces reach enlightenment through embracing denial, and then they know what's going on because they don't pay attention to it. And the more they try to figure things out, the more incomprehensible everything becomes. So yeah, they distract themselves with petty things that they convince themselves that they love, because they learn to let their real desires and dreams. Even when I talk and I'm talking about Pisces, like my voice kind of goes up, like the things I'm about to say are like expanding, and they're about to become something I can articulate. So Pisces is kind of like, they let and as soon as I try to like focus on talking, I swear I'm too tapped into this energy. Manifesting. Pisces, they manifest through denial, like I was saying. So Pisces goes from seeing the universe and their own subconscious mind from an enemy to a friend at some point. So they have to switch around this kind of like mental fog that they've been in, and learn to embrace love in a new way, so that they can learn to wield things into existence and manifest. But they still treat their own subconscious mind as an enemy, because they don't want to risk their subconscious mind becoming an actual enemy. So Pisces become very cautious in this way. So like, I think that on a surface level, a lot of Pisces feel victimized and abused and hated by the universe and all that stuff, because if they feel as bad as possible on a conscious level, it's shining a light on these things and exposing them so that there's nowhere to hide. So a lot of Pisces who are mastering their own subconscious mind, they'll become obsessed with things like death and rape and abuse and abandonment and sin and eternal hell, and like suddenly like someone popping out the corner and killing them, and like stabbing their mother and all this shit, because this is a cathartic experience for them. So the more they focus on the worst, the more benevolent their subconscious will become. because it's focusing on all this shit that they don't want. So everything that they do want gets a chance to grow in their subconscious, and then it like gravitates around them, because remember, they're working with like Jupiter energy, and Jupiter has a lot of moons. So Pisces will think their life has went to shit, and then they actually, like, people start gravitating around them who want to learn from them. They think they're some kind of like guru, because they just sense the energy that Pisces is unaware that they're working with. So Pisces doesn't know why all these people want them. They don't like these people, but it's because these people are inspired by the Pisces for reasons the Pisces doesn't know about. So, and all this goes against the Pisces' natural urge to only focus on pleasure and divinity and spiritual bliss. So Saturn puts Pisces to work in the sense that it's going to make you face your worst fears and the most torturous things that a human could ever experience, so that you can become like this God figure, or this but you don't even know it, so it's like you don't really get to benefit from it, but everybody else does. So it's kind of interesting that with Venus being exalted in Pisces and ruling over art and love and music and stuff like that, a lot of Pisces feel their deepest connection to these things when they feel the most hopeless about everything that Venus represents. So when a Pisces is on their spiritual path of facing the worst so that it can never manifest for them, so they can shrink instead of grow, they will feel the most connected to Venus energy, and to all these things that they can't realistically have in their lives right now, because their minds are so dark at the moment. They start seeing the beauty and the life and the growth and everything, because their minds become so focused around like death and possession and darkness and all this shit. I've been talking about this kind of stuff on my YouTube page for a while. I have my South Node in Pisces, so this is like past life stuff that is always a theme in my life, but I can't realize it because it's stemming from past lives. And like I said, my moon's in the 12th house too, so I experience this kind of stuff. But my moon's in Virgo, so it's the opposite of Pisces. So I experience a very strange version of this.